Hello, everybody. I had every intention to do this video immediately after I did the first video, but it was just really difficult for me because, in today's video, I want to share the week leading up to my dad's death. And, I recorded this video 3 or 4 times already and just found any reason to not like it. And I think it's just because it's a hard thing to talk about. But I know for me, I'm the type that I need to talk out loud about it. That's part of my healing process. So as difficult as this is, I want to talk about it, and so like I said in my last video, this YouTube channel is like my free therapy. So yeah, but so on January 30th of last year, I get a phone call from my dad letting me know that he was in the hospital. He stated that he had fallen and he had bruised his hip, and they also had found out that he had pneumonia. So I was like, okay. And my dad had been in the hospital before, definitely had pneumonia before. He's had so many respiratory issues. So I was like, okay. And so talked to him on that Sunday. I talked to him Monday. And then Tuesday, I'm calling his phone just to check on him, and he's not answering his phone. So I call the nurse's station and, have them transfer me into the hospital phone. Well, a CNA answers the phone, and I'm like, oh, I was trying to get, my dad's room. And she's like, oh yeah, this is your dad's room. I'm just sitting with him. Well, that was kind of an alarm bell for me because being that I used to work in a hospital as a housekeeper, I know that usually when they have a CNA sitting in somebody's room, it basically they're having that person watching them or sitting with them for concern. Either the person is very agitated or the person is a fall risk. So they usually, in that situation, will have somebody sitting in the room with them. So that was a little alarming, but I was like, okay. And then while I'm on the phone with him, he's like, you need to call my neighbor. I think somebody broke into my car. And I'm like, what? And I mean, I was 100% that nothing had happened to his car, but just to appease him, I called his neighbor, and she's like, oh yeah, nothing's wrong with his car. It's like, okay, so call him back. And, I could definitely tell that he was a little agitated, and I was talking to my sister about it, and I was like, well, they might have him on a medication. I know that there are some medications that make people agitated. So I was like, okay, that might be it. So then Wednesday, when I called him to check on him, he was super agitated, and he told me not to call him, that I was bothering the nurses, and I'm like, okay. So I decided that I wasn't going to call him on Thursday. I just wanted to kind of give him a break. I knew he was going to be in there for a few days while they figure out, getting him into a rehab facility, because he lived alone. They didn't want to just send him straight home. They wanted him to go to rehab for a little bit and then, send him home from there. So I left him alone on Thursday, and I had been in contact with my aunt, and she had told me on that day that they found out that he had a urinary tract infection. And that totally helped me understand the fact that about him being agitated, because as crazy as it sounds, in the elderly, when they have a kidney infection, some type of infection in their body, they can get agitated, they can lose memory, so I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So Friday, I had planned on calling him that afternoon just to check on him. Well, it was 12:37, and my aunt called me. And when I saw her phone number, I was like, oh gosh, something's wrong. But I reassured myself because, I'm like, no, she's just calling to let me know that they, are sending him to this rehab or that rehab or whatever, So in that quick time frame before answering the phone, I'm like, no, everything is fine. So I answered the phone, and my aunt's like, Dana, your dad died. And then my sarcastic mind said, I'm thinking in my head, I'm sorry, you mispronunciated rehab, like, no, rehab, dead. Yeah, no, you said it wrong, but obviously at that moment we had no clue what had happened, we did find out that he died of sepsis. So basically, when they found out that he had the urinary tract infection on Thursday, trying to give him antibiotics, it was too late. The infection had basically taken over his body, So I get everything together with my aunt, and I'm, letting her know that I will talk to Dawn and we'll figure everything out, because my dad was being cremated, but he wasn't being embalmed. So we had 24 hours to get there to say goodbye to him if we wanted to, so I call my sister, and, just in that brain fog, I just called her, and I was like, Dawn, Dad died. And as soon as I said that, I could hear, my sister gasping or whatever. And I realized that my sister was at work. Like, I should have known that she was at work, but like, just in my brain fog. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, like, not prepare you. I should have said, hey, walk away, or, whatever. But it is what it is. But so, yeah, I told her that he passed away, and, I mean, we had to, act fast, because, at that point I didn't know if I wanted to see him, but, I knew that my sister would probably want to see him. So, in that, next 6 hours, I ended up calling my youngest daughter, and it's kind of funny, we have a sarcastic relationship, and so as soon as I called her, she's like, what do you want? And that's always been kind of our thing, answering the phone, and I was like, I said, you need to get here right now. My dad died, and so she lived about 20 miles away. So she headed over, and then my oldest daughter was at a doctor's appointment. So I knew I really couldn't, get a hold of her because she was in her appointment. So I just texted her. I said, hey, I need you to come home as soon as possible. My dad died. So as they were there and helping me, I was trying to figure out the whole thing about getting to Ohio, so, I end up, finding a flight, and, so I was on a plane by 6:15 that night. So literally within 6 hours, I had gone from finding out that my dad died to being on an airplane, and it was just, I was such a mess, just like so much to process in such a short amount of time. And, I was really trying to keep myself together, and, I ended up going to the bathroom on the plane, and, my eyes were just so puffy from, just crying so much. And so I look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my face is, puffy. And I'm like, oh, I need to clean my face. And at that moment, that kind of triggered, because like I've said before, my dad was a very harsh man, so when it came to crying, his immediate reaction was wash your face, because he didn't want nobody to see, that I was upset or whatever, and so in that moment, as I'm looking in the mirror, I'm like, no, I'm not going to clean my face. But I just like started bawling so hard. And so I am literally walking back to my seat, just grabbing onto the seats. And, I wasn't trying to make a spectacle, I wasn't trying to get attention, but at the same time, I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm grieving at this moment, so I get back to my seat, and I knew that somebody was going to alert the flight attendant, which was totally fine. She came over and asked me if I was okay, and I said, no, I just found out my dad died, wanted to say goodbye. And she was just so kind. Like, she didn't even bring me a little pack of Kleenex. She bought me a whole box, so yeah, that day was definitely a hard day, but I got to Ohio, and I literally got to Ohio like midnight, And, you know, it was snowing, so it took us a little bit longer to get back to my sister's house. And then we ended up leaving like 7 o'clock the next morning. And, you know, it was a good drive to St. Louis. You know, we just were really able to process stuff. And, you know, one of my immediate reactions after I found out that my dad died was just that I had so many unfinished conversations with my dad. I just wanted, you know, to tell my dad how he had hurt me, and, you know, just emotionally or whatever, you know. So while me and my sister were in the car, I just asked her if we could stop by a, you know, like a journal, like a Hobby Lobby. So we stopped by Hobby Lobby, and I got a journal, and that was my intention, was to write down, you know, my thoughts, you know, things that I wanted to say to my dad, you know. So yeah, so that is the story up into that Saturday. I will do another video next, well, it might not be exactly today, but my next video will be when we got to St. Louis, and saying goodbye to my dad and going through all his stuff in his apartment. So yeah, that will be my next video. Thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. You know, there will definitely be some sad things that I will talk about, but I will also be talking about good things about my mom and dad. So thank you so much. Much love. To God be the glory. Bye.